In the entire grand scheme of biblical history, few figures loom as large as King Solomon, son of David, King of Israel. Granted unparalleled wisdom by God himself, Solomon stands as a monument to human insight and divine favor. Yet his life reveals a profound philosophical truth. Wisdom does not shield one from suffering, it often deepens it. As Solomon declares in the book of Ecclesiastes, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief," in Ecclesiastes 1:18. This verse, penned in Solomon's later years, encapsulates the paradox at the heart of his existence. Today, we explore not merely the triumphs of Israel's wisest king, but the intimate correlation between wisdom and sorrow, the maturation of his understanding of justice, and how the shadows of his father's struggles, particularly with lust, echoed into his own life, shaping a legacy of both glory and vanity. Solomon's story begins with promise. Ascending the throne after his father David's death, the young king sought divine guidance. In a dream at Gibeon, God appeared and offered him anything his heart desired. Solomon did not ask for riches, long life, or victory over enemies. Instead, he prayed for a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong in 1 Kings 3:9. What makes this exchange remarkable is the philosophical depth in the back and forth between Solomon and God. Solomon approached not with entitlement, but with radical humility, confessing, "I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number." In this moment, he embodied the essence of true wisdom, the recognition that leadership is not about personal power or brilliance, but about moral discernment in service to something greater than oneself. God, pleased by this selfless posture rather than self-serving ambition, responded with generosity that far exceeded the request. He granted Solomon a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be, along with riches and honor he had not sought. Philosophically, this dialogue illustrates a profound truth about wisdom itself. It is not merely intellectual acuity, but a relational virtue born of humility and dependence on the divine. The back and forth reveals that wisdom begins when we relinquish the illusion of self-sufficiency and align our desires with God's purposes. In an age that often equates wisdom with autonomy or cleverness, Solomon's request stands as a timeless reminder that the wisest path is the one that acknowledges human limitation and seeks divine perspective for the sake of justice and the common good. Early in his reign, this wisdom shone brilliantly. Consider the famous judgment between two women claiming the same child. Solomon proposed dividing the infant, revealing the true mother through her compassion. The people stood in awe, recognizing the wisdom of God in him to administer justice. In those days, his Proverbs flowed with confidence in a moral order. Proverbs portrays a world where wisdom leads to righteousness and justice prevails under God's sovereign hand. Solomon writes in Proverbs, "The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him." To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Here, justice appears reliable. The righteous prosper, the wicked stumble, and a discerning king upholds equity. Solomon's early writings hammer this home. Wisdom is practical, actionable, and tied to divine order. It promises stability, fear the Lord, walk in integrity, and justice will flourish. Yet as Solomon aged, his perspective transformed profoundly. The man who once celebrated wisdom's rewards confronted its burdens. In Ecclesiastes, widely regarded as the reflections of an older, more jaded Solomon, the tone shifts from optimistic instruction to existential inquiry. He had pursued wisdom relentlessly, In Ecclesiastes, he states, "I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens." What did he discover? Not triumphant clarity, but sorrow. Ecclesiastes 1:18 encapsulates one of his most known quotes, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief." This is no casual observation. It is a philosophical cornerstone. The wiser one becomes, the more one perceives life's injustices, absurdities, and fleeting nature. Knowledge unveils oppression where fairness should reign, futility where purpose is sought. Solomon saw something else on earth. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. In the place of righteousness, wickedness was there. In youth, Proverbs assumed a just order upheld by the wise. In maturity, Ecclesiastes acknowledges that under the sun, justice often fails. The oppressed have no comforter. Extortion of the poor and perversion of justice in government should not surprise us, as stated in Ecclesiastes 5:8. His viewpoints on justice evolve markedly. Proverbs presents justice as attainable through wisdom and righteousness, a cause and effect moral universe where the righteous will never be uprooted, but the wicked will not remain in the land. Ecclesiastes, however, tempers this with realism born of experience. Human systems falter, and ultimate justice belongs to God alone, who will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. The young king taught proactive justice. The older preacher urges acceptance of divine timing amid apparent vanity. Solomon re-solidifies this in Ecclesiastes 3:17 by saying, "I thought to myself, God will judge both the righteous and the wicked. For there is a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed." Wisdom then brings sorrow precisely because it illuminates what remains unresolved under the sun. The more Solomon knew, the heavier the grief, yet this sorrow refined his ultimate counsel. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. True meaning transcends earthly justice. It rests in reverent obedience. This deepening sorrow intertwined with personal struggles inherited from his father. King David, though a man after God's own heart, wrestled profoundly with lust. His infamous sin with Bathsheba, seeing her, desiring her, committing adultery, and orchestrating her husband Uriah's death, unleashed cascading consequences. The death of their child, familial turmoil, and national unrest. David repented deeply, seen in Psalm 51, yet the wounds lingered. Solomon, born of that union after divine mercy, carried echoes of this vulnerability. Here we see a striking philosophical juxtaposition in how father and son responded to the same core temptation of lust. David's sin was explosive and grievous, adultery compounded by murder, yet he confronted it with raw, broken repentance, crying out in Psalm 51, "Create in me a pure heart, O God." His posture revealed a profound understanding that true restoration comes not from hiding sin, but from transparent contrition before a merciful God. Solomon's sin, by contrast, was slower, more comfortable, and insidious. He loved many foreign women and accumulated 700 wives and 300 concubines, many from nations God had explicitly warned against. What began as political alliances drifted gradually into idolatry, as his foreign wives turned his heart after other gods, leading him to worship Ashtoreth, Moloch, and others. Unlike David's dramatic fall and swift repentance, Solomon's was a gradual erosion, a slow, incremental drift from wholehearted devotion. Philosophically, this subtle turning away can be far more dangerous, akin to venom that spreads quietly through the veins, paralyzing the system before the victim even realizes the full extent of the poison. Explosive sins often shock the conscience into repentance, but the slow drift numbs it, allowing compromise to feel normal and even justified. Wisdom, ironically, illuminated the danger for Solomon. Proverbs 5:3-4 states, "The lips of an adulterous woman drip honey, but in the end she is bitter as gall. Yet even the wisest man grappled with it," revealing that knowledge alone does not guarantee obedience. In Ecclesiastes' reflections, we sense the cost. Pursuits of pleasure, including sensual ones, yield only vanity and a chasing after the wind. Suffering and sorrow deepened, not despite his wisdom, but through it. He understood the folly too clearly, yet lived its consequences. His father's legacy of passion and repentance shadowed his own path, reminding us that human frailty persists even in the gifted, and that the posture of the heart, whether repentant or drifting, determines the trajectory of one's spiritual life. This pattern also circles back to the reality of generational curses and blessings operating in tension across human history. Solomon himself wrote with a tone of mocking cynicism about legacy in Ecclesiastes. "I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me, and who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish." In one sense, he had a point. Human achievement often appears futile when it falls into uncertain or unworthy hands, underscoring the vanity of striving without eternal perspective. Yet God's mercy reveals a deeper truth. Generational blessings can counterbalance curses. It was precisely his father, David's legacy of covenant faithfulness, despite David's own failures, that protected Solomon and even his son Rehoboam from the full measure of divine wrath. God did not tear the kingdom away from Solomon during his lifetime, nor strip it entirely from his line, declaring, "For the sake of David your father." David's legacy of devotion, though imperfect, outlasted both himself and Solomon's eventual unfaithfulness. While patterns of sin, such as vulnerability to lust, can echo forward like generational curses, so too can blessings rooted in prior faithfulness extend grace and restraint far beyond what one deserves. Philosophically, this illustrates that legacies are never purely individual. They ripple through time, carrying both shadow and light. Solomon may have questioned whether he himself became the fool who inherited his father's work, yet God's faithfulness to David's line reminds us that divine promises can preserve and redeem what human effort alone cannot sustain. King Solomon's life, then, is a profound philosophical meditation. Wisdom correlates intimately with suffering. It grants clarity to behold life's griefs. With much wisdom comes much sorrow, yet equips one to seek what endures. His views on justice matured from the confident assertions of Proverbs, where righteousness reliably triumphs, to the tempered realism of Ecclesiastes, where earthly injustice persists until God's final judgment, and the lust that plagued his father David transferred to him, underscoring that even divine wisdom does not exempt one from temptation's pull or its vanity, whether through explosive failure met with repentance or a slow, venomous drift. In the end, Solomon's narrative urges us, pursue wisdom relentlessly, but anchor it in the fear of God, for apart from him, all is vanity. As he later concludes in Ecclesiastes 12:13, "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments." In Solomon's sorrow lies an invitation to live not merely under the sun, but in light of eternity.